But I don't want to go there. We got enough juicy stuff. We got the stuff. It's fine. It's fine. Good Shabbos. Good morning. We have great Torah to study and bagels with a tray of lux like I've never seen. I'm lying, but I want to get to here. It's a gift to study Torah as always. Even with this portion, which is not easy. But then again, who said Torah was going to be easy? Share with me in the blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen. Now I meet everybody online. No, I love them dearly. And if you want to speak, you can always unmute. So this is Bechukotai, the last portion in the book of Leviticus. It is, as I mentioned last night, it is the blessings and curses portion. You don't have to go to the curses, however, to be challenged by the blessings, because the blessings are not easy to understand, and especially in the moment in which we sit in time, they are especially resonant. So your desire is going to be to immediately jump to the present. I'm not pointing at anybody in particular, right? But allow the text to make its claim on you. See what the commentators say, and I guarantee you, we will get to today. Okay? All right. So I'm going to start over here and go around this way. Start with Josh. So remember, we just had Bahar. We studied Bahar last week. I think I used Meron Ben Benisti, former deputy mayor of Jerusalem, who's so powerful, who thought about, in essence, is Jewish Israelis and Arabs living in the same land in the same place, almost like a pan nationalism. He called himself neo-Canaanite, but somehow his understanding was that the covenant is linked in the land and you cannot dissociate. That will be reinforced this week, as the core question will be, we'll see it in a minute, what is the promise of peace in the land? How does peace happen? And as the phrase in the Torah will tell us or challenge us, how can Israel make shalom ba'aretz real? Because it's very specific phraseology, and we will try to unpack it as we go along. Now we're ready for Josh.
If you follow my laws and faithfully observe my commandments, I will grant your rains in their season, so that the earth shall yield its produce and the trees of the field their fruit. Your threshing shall overtake the vintage, and your vintage shall overtake the sowing. You shall eat your fill of bread and dwell securely in your land.
Yeah, keep going.
I will grant peace in the land, and you shall lie down untroubled by anyone. I will give the land respite from vicious beasts, and no sword shall cross your land. You shall give chase to your enemies, and they shall fall before you by the sword. 5 of you shall give chase to 100, and 100 of you shall give chase to 10,000. Your enemies shall fall before you by the sword. I will look with favor upon you, and make you fertile, and multiply you, and I will maintain my covenant with you.
All right, wait, finish it up. You shall eat.
You shall eat old grain, long stored, and you shall have to clear out the old to make room for the new. I will establish my abode in your midst, and I shall not spurn you. I will be ever present in your midst. I will be your God, and you shall be my people. I, Adonai, am your God, who brought you out from the land of the Egyptians to be their slaves no more, who broke the bars of your yoke and made you walk erect.
Right. So this is the blessing section, right? And then, which is 10 verses. We don't have to go there. We're not going to go there. But the next verse is Ve'im b'chukotai, Ve'im lo tishme'u li. If you do not listen to me, right, and observe my commandments, if you reject my laws, right, and break my covenant, I in turn will do this to you. And then we get 32 verses of curses. So it is, it's burdensome. We're not gonna go there. We don't really need to. The question of the blessing is really what occupies us today. So if you were gonna respond on a shot level, based on what you read in just these 10 verses, what's going on with the blessings and specifically the promise of peace? Harv.
So I have a question,
Yeah,
and it's, I get that grammar in Hebrew is never a strong suit of mine. But when I read this in my very limited way, so I look at, V'natati Shalom, I read that as I gave, and it's now in the future, I will grant.
right.
Now, and so can you help me, is it?
Yes.
am
You're reading it right. Remember, Harley studied at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, right?
I did,
And got your degree in Hebrew University in Jerusalem,
I did.
right? Which means that,
It's part of my teeth.
right, Harley studied, right? He didn't study in Spanish, okay? He studied Hebrew, but this is called Vav HaHipuch, or the reversing Vav, which means if you put a Vav in front of a past tense verb in the Bible, it's the first class we studied with Yossi Leshem, our Duke teacher, the great Yossi Leshem in Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem. It goes from past to future.
And is that a true thing, or is that just a rabbi?
You know what? It is, I don't know, I don't know where Vav HaHipuch comes from. If anybody out there in listening land knows where Vav HaHipuch comes from, right? But I will tell you that it is a universal rule in translating the Bible. So I looked this morning at Everett Fox, and he as well translates it in the future.
Okay.
But I love that you noted it's in the past, isn't it?
So just going down the path of the future for a moment.
Yeah,
This that appears, God maintains the conditionally.
yeah. So Clarence, you can't miss it. And if you saw my introduction to the little blessing we did, or the beautiful blessing we did last night with all those, I don't know, what are we gonna call them? Old timers.
Old time.
Old timers. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Steve, right? So right, it's about, it seems devoted old time. So what Clarence is pointing out is the other question, is the covenant conditional? Which would mean what? If you keep it, a be gesund. If you break it, God forbid, right? You got some problems. So is the covenant conditional? It's hard to take that way, isn't it?
It's, I mean, the first part, there's a lot of giving, the land is giving, God is giving. the
Yeah,
water is giving,
yeah.
Trees are giving.
What a given.
But also there's, the giving of peace, but then, you shall give chase to your enemies and they shall fall before you by the sword.
Yeah,
So that it's like the opposite of peace.
yeah, yeah. So here Everett Fox as well, in his introduction says, the blessings are defining peace, the curses define war. You want to see heaven and hell, right? So but they're doing it by way of understanding who are the people around you who are held at bay. And the implication, which is, I think you underscore it, and mine is all in orange. I don't know if you can see, it's all highlighted in orange. They can't say anything. Can you see anything in Paris? No. Right. So it says 5 of you shall give chase to 100, right? Where does it say the key one that I'm looking for? Wait a minute. Maybe it's not here. Maybe it's it's in the. I thought it was in this part. Where does it say that?
Your enemies shall fall before you by the sword.
No, that's not it. Maybe it's in, it's in the curses. It's in the curses, which is the basis of Milton Steinberg's book. As a driven lead. You shall flee though none pursues. Talk about paranoia.
Yeah.
Talk about the opposite of peace. Talk about the opposite of being settled in the land. You run away and nobody's chasing you. My God. And that's the nicest part of the curses, right? Right? How about cannibalism, folks, in the curses? Oh my God. So, so what do we see here? What do we see here? We see a lot here. We see that, note, in verse, is it conditional? Ve'im lo. If you do, if you don't, it sure seems conditional.
He keeps reminding us also that he took us out of Egypt and that he's giving us peace. So, we have to keep connecting to him in order to, and
Yeah, but somehow this plays out the greater drama. I just read, I'm in the middle of editing 26 confirmation Sinai statements. It's amazing we have 26 kids in confirmation. And Gabe Kraut used Jonathan Sachs as his thinker, which nobody does. And he read the whole book in order to do it, just, for 3 days. And Sachs says that there are 4 big questions that are being asked of us as people Israel, and that we are part of a story of which we are but a letter. So just like it's called letter in the scroll. So this is a bigger story. We have to plug in to, as you're envisioning, to a bigger narrative, because God references it, right? I brought you out of Egypt so you'd have a purpose here, right? There's a bigger story being told.
It doesn't seem to me that there's any room for error here. A little difficult to get, because, we're not perfect. So, what happens if you make a mistake?
Right. As my Bobby would say, you got a 99. What happened to the other? Right? Not easy, these shoes. So think about that. So is God looking for perfection here? Is that what God's looking for? I don't think so. But God is looking for us to live in a certain way, and presumably to use covenant and the commandments as our lifestyle. What's the real challenge here? And I'm going to focus in on it. I'm doing great. Michael Feinberg, I'm not going to tell you the challenge. First, Michael Feinberg.
Yeah, whenever I read this parasha and some others, I think, thank God for the book of Job.
Yes, now let me be Michael Feinberg's interpreter. Ask Michael, do you mean because Job says, what did I do wrong to get all of this stuff?
You got it. You got
right?
it.
So Job says there is no system of reward and punishment. There is no divine retribution that we can perceive in the world. Life happens. Yeah. And if you think that covenant is conditional, because as I noted last week, many a wonderful human being suffers, and many Schmendrick, right, who was really not a nice person, right? Those sometimes, right? Lloyd, is Lloyd here?
Yes.
Right. I'm not gonna, right? Read Lloyd's article on the conviction of the 34 counts, right? And sometimes justice seems to be paid. Sometimes. Of course, what that justice is, we don't know. Do not go there, please. I don't have time. Right? So, so what's being played out here? It's a definition of peace. What is peace? The first hint is in verse 5. What does it say? It's linked to agriculture, right? It says you're going to have such growth if you had vineyards. Oh my God! Talk about who's the most famous in California? What's the vineyards? The one
Napa Valley.
Thank you, Napa Valley. Oh my God! Right? It make the Napa Valley look like the desert, right? So and it says V'yashavtem lavetach ba'artzechem. You shall dwell in security, towards security in your land. So somehow linked with the land is dwelling securely. And the next thing, as Harley pointed out, Benatati shalom ba'aretz, and I shall give you peace in the land. Could you read it? I gave you peace in the land? Yeah, maybe interesting for us to come back to that in the draft show. And then it has this whole definition, as Lisa just underscored, right? And as Josh was reading, he kept underscoring when in his tone, by the sword, right? It sounds like peace is achieved
Just read it.
by holding the sword. right? You're just reading, but
It only happened twice.
I know, but I sense your feelings, okay? I know, Steve,
Nowhere does it mention how you should treat other people.
well,
And so therefore.
yeah,
Therefore, just because you follow all these commands, it's not telling you.
yeah, so Steve is on to something. How does this impact, and could we imply, if you keep my commandments? Well, we know what the commandments are. Do not stand idle while your brother bleeds. Don't cheat somebody who's, who has a disability, or, so we know the commandments, love your neighbor as yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe then it's implied, right? Virginia and then Philip, excuse me, then Susan.
Yes, thanks, Rabbi. So I have a group of people that we read through the Torah out loud each week. And so we got kind of the classic Peshat question, which we had answers for, but I'm sure they weren't nearly as good as you will get by the end of the session. But the Peshat question was, well, here are all the blessings, here are the rewards. Maybe the terrible things that happened to Israel happened because they are not obeying the commandments. So I thought I'd just put that out there.
Yeah, no, which is exactly what both Steve and Clarence imply, which is, wait a minute, this is conditional? If this is conditional, if we don't keep this stuff, this is not a veiled threat. This is a way out there threat, right? Right? If you don't, Virginia, now you. And then
everything is conditional, isn't it? But what went wrong, Rabbi? This is a very simple recipe. What went wrong? Human beings, what went wrong?
Yeah, what went wrong, right? Right. All right. So, right, that's a great question. But let's go back to your first statement, which everything is conditional, is it? What does it mean? It seems to be here that there's an if then. That to me, that's what conditional is. The great Pinchas Pelly, Ben Gurion University professor of Bible, says this implies an if then. If you do, then this will happen. If you don't, then this will happen. But life doesn't happen that way.
Well, I was thinking about what Steve said. It doesn't talk about people, but it does in a sense, because we're talking about leaving Egypt and standing tall and erect.
Yeah.
It means that, you have some moral responsibility now.
Yeah.
Now it's time to look people in the eye, because you're looking erect, you're not looking.
Beautiful. So the framing of all of this is, if you can't miss it, I hope you don't miss it, is yes, you're going to have agricultural produce and you're going to have plenty of stuff to eat. I'm going to give you peace in the land, meaning the threat of the sword is not going to come, right? You'll be able to dwell in peace. And because of that, I can establish my covenant with you. Ba'akimoti et briti, and I will be in your midst, right? You're going to be, this place will be my home, right? I shall be your God and you will be my people. Now, if that's not covenant, I don't know what is. And what is the outcome of that? What is the outcome is, thus, you will walk erect with none to make you afraid.
So maybe one can position this in a different way.
Go ahead.
More positive way.
Go ahead.
That is, maybe the Israelites were living in war. This was a vision of peace in the future.
Yeah.
That they could achieve.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we're in the book of Leviticus, right? We know when the book of Leviticus was framed, right? If you want to be historic, right? The destruction of the northern kingdom just happened. The dispersal of many tribes. The southern kingdom was not, Judah is holding on, right? So it's a threat of war, a time of war, a time of absolute, craziness, chaos. So the fact that they were hoping that this is an aspirational, if we could only have. Mike.
Say, it's really there's such a darkness to it, pessimism to it, because it just is emphasizing that there will always be strife, at least outside of the borders, looking to invade and disrupt your peace.
Okay, So now I'm gonna go to the remnants, only because I can't resist, because Mike just gave me the in, right? And I will send you a check after Shabbat. Do people still send checks? I shouldn't say that. I will Venmo you after. Right? I should be so much cooler than I am. Right? So, so is that what's being played out? So let's look at the rabbis think and the commentators think. In fact, what is the peace that's being put forth here as a promise? How does it happen? What does it mean for us as a people, Israel? What does it mean for all those around us, our place in the world? Great way to frame. We begin with the tough stuff. Who's not? Dr. Tom. Go with the Pinchas Pelt, who I just quoted.
There's a single word in Torah that caused a whole new world of moral and religious thought. A short word, just 2 letters.
In Hebrew, im. Im.
Im introduces the covenantal comparative, establishing the inevitable independence between Israel's destiny and its moral conduct. Israel's blessings are conditional.
So how does Pinchas Peli read this? He says it's about your keeping the commandments. So it is about how covenant happens. If you walk away from them, right, you can never have peace in the land. No, you will never dwell in security. So it may be, right, the second piece is talking about all those nations out there in your relationship. The beginning is, how do you exist in this place?
So here's the problem I'm having with this dialogue.
Yeah.
What
The problem is,
I'm not seeing how I have impulse control. All you people online who are looking at your watches, right? Stop that. Go ahead.
so all these wonderful things that God holds in front of us, abundance, peace,
Yeah.
all of these things, that's great. But if your actions decide how God engages with you, how can you ignore the reality of what's going on in your world and still have a dialogue with God, where God will say, based on the fact that you only killed X number of people instead of wiping out the whole population.
Right.
So.
Right. Artie's doing exactly what I said. Don't go to today just yet. Right. So, but you're asking the right question, which is, so what happens if you keep the covenant and things suck?
Exactly.
What happens, Brett? So let me put it into biblical terms. Right. Right.
I'd like to make maybe another Harley Hebrew point, if we can call it that, because the word im also means with, and the translation of if maybe is limiting in the sense of a binary condition.
Yeah. The only problem with that is it's spelled different. Right. So it's spelled different. But I'm gonna.
Maybe the writer made a mistake.
Good. Right. Maybe yes, maybe no. Right. Let me call on Lloyd. Then again, get Ellis than Mike. Lloyd.
But im is a tricky word.
Im is a tricky word. Go ahead.
If you go back to the book of Genesis.
Yeah.
Jacob flees his parents' home. He's on the road. He has a dream. And he wakes up from the dream. And he conditions the dream. He said, if you are with me on my journey.
Yeah.
Im.
Yeah.
The rabbis freak out over it because who?
Right. He just has this ladder fixed and now it's a conditional.
Right. So the rabbis have to apply a gloss to it. And they said, no, we didn't mean if. He meant when.
When. So now look at that. Let me support Lloyd's interpretation of Asen, right? Right. So watch this. So here's the Jastra, my rabbinic dictionary, which you don't have. If or when, primary meanings, right? Or whether, quoting the Talmud in Tractate Yoma, whether or not. So what this could mean is, right, whether you keep these commandments or not, right? Or, right, that's tough. Or I like better the first meaning, which is when you do this, you're going to feel like life is good. When you don't, right? So maybe God isn't promising anything except for a way to walk.
So Jason was right.
Josh. Right. Yes, so Josh, in a
It
way,
was an aspirational.
it was, right. Ellis and then Mike. Ellis first.
I was gonna say that, in order to make sense of things, you have to make sense of things. And the sense that you make exists only within the capacity of the spectrum of reason present to everybody who is at a place at a time.
Right.
It reminds me of 500 years ago when the Greeks and some of the Arab scientists, all of the crazy stuff that they were writing about their understanding of cancer, because they had no idea what it was. And in that context, they just wrote what they thought it was.
Right.
Even though it turns out, as the spectrum of reason expands 500 years later, we understand things now that we could not have conceivably understood at the time.
Right. So your statement, which is a very wise one, is they're trying to understand their world in context, right? And it's based on what they know about their lives and their world at the moment, right? Absolutely, right, Mike.
Yeah, I think there's something subtle going on in the change between your land and the land. I see that if you do all these things, you will dwell securely in your land. I will grant peace in the land, which then becomes at the end, and no sword shall cross your land. So the suggestion is your land, your peace depends on the peace around you in a larger peace. That we zoom in on the your, and then we zoom out again to the
V'natati shalom ba'aretz, right? As if the land is somehow part of the covenantal imperative.
So going along that sort of in the way my mind is working sort of strangely is he's saying, I will establish my abode, my mishkan in your midst.
Yeah.
Instead of us building it.
Yeah, so somehow God builds God's dwelling place in our midst when we keep covenant. Yeah. So God says you don't have to build a mishkan. Right? I know Clarence and Sandra.
I was very interested in Michael's first comment related to Job.
Yeah.
Is the Haftarah related? What is the Haftarah of this portion?
I don't even remember. Lloyd, what's the Haftarah of this portion? Will you look it up? I don't remember. Thank you.
Can Job help us in understanding of this?
Oh, I think Job helps us a lot, but I think that we can help ourselves. What is it? Okay, we'll get it. So let's keep going because we wanted to find, right? Mike intimated before, Lisa just said, so what is it that enables us to have Jeremiah? What? Jeremiah?
16. Verse 16, 19 through 17.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it's
in the day of affliction.
Yeah, it's the suffering of Israel and its vindication.
Not but lies, vanity, things wherein there is no profit.
Yeah, it's a great Haftarah. Right? Like almost all of them, right? We'll get first the coming of verse 5, right? So now we'll get the beginning of the definition. So what does it mean, right? At the end of the verse, v'yeshavtem lavetach ba'artzachem, and you shall dwell in security in your land, right? And what does the Eitz Chaim say, which is really just Harold Kushner? Who's reading? Andy.
Eitz Chaim. When will the people be able to dwell securely? When there's enough food for everyone so that no one is driven to crime or violence? Ultimately, then the question of whether our society will be blessed with peace or cursed with violence depends on how well we share our resources.
Right. I mean, I don't
agree with it. I just read it.
Right. So, what is Harold Kushner saying? What is Harold Kushner saying? He's saying the reason that you shall dwell securely is linked to the agricultural is because it's about how we relate to the land. Think about A.D. Gordon last week. How does our covenant come to life? Through our treatment of the land, which is why what Michael said makes a lot of sense. It is the land, capital T. Somehow it's the personification of the land as a partner in covenant. So the beginning is, how do we dwell in the land? Meaning, how do we treat the land?
And I just want to say, I'm with Virginia because the relationship with the land, which I have learned trying to grow a garden and having chickens, is entirely conditional.
Yes.
If you water it, it will grow. If you don't feed them, they will die. There's no.
Right. Yes. And again, I'm gonna do Jill Rhodes' funeral, tomorrow. Jill Rhodes is a great member of Temple, two great kids, 23 and 26, I think. And, and she was a yoga instructor and a photographer, and she watered the land and took such care of her body. And then got one cancer and it went away a little, and then got another cancer and then another cancer, 8 years. She watered the land. She was so attuned, she was so strong, right? So, yeah, then what? Then what? So, which is why we gotta find an answer, because I can't leave you like this. Right? So then let's jump into verse 6, because verse 6 is, okay, I'm gonna grant you peace in the land. You're gonna lie down with none to cause you terror. And it goes on and on and on. Right? Untroubled. No sword. And then it gives us the definition based on the sword, what peace would mean. What do the rabbis make of this? Rashi is Rashi. So Rashi says, give us a Rashi real quick.
We'll say the first food is here is drink. But if there is no peace, there is nothing. And it says, peace in the land. Here we see that peace is important.
Right, Rashi just quoted the Talmud, right? Rashi's saying, if you don't have peace, it doesn't matter what you have to eat, right? It doesn't matter how good the threshing and the produce is. There's nothing more important. It is the chief blessing. So how is it then, right? How is peace paramount? Do we have to read this one? Yes, it's the same thing. Mizrahi is, and I realized I never give you like where these guys are from, so I thought, oh, maybe I'll give you, just so you know. Barbara, give us the Mizrahi.
Rashi's reading is based on the strange order of the verses. Since the promises begin with agricultural rewards, mention peace, and return to agriculture, we can infer that peace is equivalent to the promises of plenty that precede and follow it. Peace is integral to and actually a feature of plenty. For without peace, what's the value of the blessing of plenty?
Right, so Mizrahi goes one step further. Mizrahi says, right, you can only know what it is to have your fill of bread if you can eat it in peace, if you can be at peace. What did we do go back to what Lisa said, what did we do as slaves, right? Why is this a juxtaposition of Egypt? How did we eat our meal? The chipazon. The first Passover was fast food. We ate it standing up with our loins girded, meaning we had all our stuff in our backs. We were ready to leave at any moment. That's not what peace is.
So just like God will give, but God gave peace in the land.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things I think that could be reflective of that.
Yeah.
If there's shalom ba'aretz, there's also shalom ba in the people. And the example you gave earlier of this time, in the 7th or 8th. It just wasn't two kingdoms. You had this strife between these two peoples where the state, the confederation of states called Israel, was the enemy of Judah. And it was that kind of discord in the people which could have set up the conditions where the Assyrians were able to come down and decimate the 10 tribes. And Judah had to go look to the Egyptians for support.
Yeah.
So
what are we saying? Let me just, I'm saying this for the benefit of Barney is that the lack of peace makes for strange political bedfellows.
Well, the lack of what was the kernel of the breakup.
Internal dissensions, yeah.
Internal strife.
Yep. Now you gotta read a Barban, right? Because I'm gonna skip the Goria, he's fine.
Right? It's something that Naftali Bennett says all the time.
All the time, yeah. I like Naftali Bennett, by the way. I think he's a good guy. I met him once. Look at the Abarbanel, because the Abarbanel is gonna say what Harley's saying, and he reads it from the text. Clark.
Repetition is a response to the fact that an unequal harvest engenders conflict. The The text states, I will give peace in the land, meaning God will give peace among them, the inhabitants. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah's prosperity, and Judah will not begrudge Ephraim, so that even in the fields and vineyards, they will lie down and not be afraid.
Yeah, if there's conflict internally, there can never be peace externally. It just won't work, right? Jeff, you're saying,
No, but I want to jump ahead, but it's so, the reality of what's going on in Israel today.
Yes.
It's 100%.
Yeah, no, it resonates, right? It resonates, and we see how difficult, this sense of, yes, we can respect each other. Yes, you don't have to all agree. That's not what it says.
You know, the lack of peace, the comment, lack of peace pollutes everything else. I certainly agree with that. And if your actions determine which way to go, what's missing from that equation is you cannot control what others do. How do you reach others to get to the same mindset of peace if you don't have that tranquility in yourself to reach beyond what you're comfortable?
Right. So the beginning of the portion is im b'chukotai telechu v'et mitzvotai tishmeru. If you walk in my ways and guard or observe my mitzvot, there's a path. If you disregard them, right? There's going to be hell to pay.
How do you get others who don't want to walk in your way to come to that party?
Right, we'll get there.
So I think it's a little different.
Go ahead.
I think it's more like God is the big architect in the sky.
Okay.
And he's laying out a
blueprint. Yeah.
And saying, look, it's yours to screw up. If you're in that blueprint and working, there's a shot that this could happen.
Right.
This is not a problem.
So you're aligning with Harley, which I'm not going to disregard, which is, listen, I've already given it to you.
Yeah, but
I've given you the blueprint for peace.
But there's no guarantees.
Now it's up for you to build it, right? Let's go with your metaphor. Now you can either build it or you can disregard it.
The important thing is to know that there are no guarantees, even then.
Okay, even then, no guarantees. I want to read Orach Chaim and then I'm going to call on my online people. So, but let me just read Orach Chaim first. Who's reading? Katrina.
Why did the Torah have to mention, I will give peace in the land, after having already stated, you shall dwell safely? Perhaps it's referring to the people of the land of Israel themselves, meaning that there would be no discord among them, that God would plant within them peace and friendship. According to this interpretation, dwelling safely in your land means protection from external threats and worse, while giving peace in your land, which means freedom from eternal strife and discord among fellow inhabitants of the land.
Yeah, so you get the nuance here. The nuance is God first says, "V'yishav temple betach b'artzachem," meaning, all right, you're going to be fine, right, from external threat, right, and you're going to be fine. At the next verse, I'm going to give you peace in the land, meaning you're going to actually get along. You're going to actually not want to beat each other up or kill each other, right? So there's that, right? But so let me go with Elizabeth, Virginia, then Alex.
I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good.
Okay.
We hear you.
Okay.
We hear you.
But it's just the assumption by God, by the Torah, is that we're in charge. We are victorious over whoever would question our laws and our ways. And, maybe not,
Yeah, the assumption is that in fact, if we behave in a certain way,
yeah.
that is that, yeah. So it
And
again,
it's trying to explain the inexplicable. And
yes.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes. Virginia and then Alex.
Yeah, I have a little different angle here. It really shows in a fascinating way Israel as an agricultural society. And I always wonder why in our yearly cycle we go from harvest to this, to planting to, and it really, the base of this society is agricultural. And only if you have laws applying to the agriculture life, you can really dwell in it. If there's no enough harmony between agricultural neighbors, it's not going to work. And it's so beautiful to see this. Yeah.
And if you look at the end of the curses when God says, okay, enough, right? In like verse 44 or something at the end of the chapter, 46, I remember. God says, and I remember my covenant with Jacob and with Abraham, and I will remember the land. Because the land is a partner in covenant. The land is the animated, right? So how we live on the land and with the land determines the nature of our covenant. Else.
You say that whether by man or by God or by the gods, any polarity that is created, as in you will do this and you will not do that, is an acknowledgement that people have done this and have done that.
Yes.
They will do this and that
Yes.
they will do that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so what you're dealing with is really an observation and an understanding, because the people that do this and the people that don't do this both have to exist because they define each other.
Right.
One
And
cannot exist without the other.
Yeah. And they're responding to the difficulty and the challenge of their life situation, as you said before, trying to create on the basis of the reason that they have available, how we understand what the heck is going on, right? Mike, Jane, and I go back to the text.
Again, I guess what strikes me is just, this is sort of promoting a kind of isolationism that's the opposite of, of the commandment to heal the world. And this is, I think, just picking up on what Ellis was saying.
Yeah.
It's like the world is a rough, dark place.
Yeah.
And, if you do these things, you will enjoy, peace and prosperity, but you don't have any obligation to try to heal the rest of it.
Right. Or do you? Right? We don't or do you? Right? Look at Before Shore. Before I gotta go to Before Shore before I go to Jane. So because Before Shore is gonna then set a tone for us. Who's reading? Carol.
There are humans who dwell securely in the world and simply do not give their hearts over to fear. But were they to shift even slightly and open their hearts to fear, they would be terrified. And there are those people who are insecure and fearful, even though there is no need. Therefore, if you will dwell toward security, meaning your heart will not live in dread, and you will not live with a full sense of security, and I am placing peace.
Before Shore's comment is so transformational if you think about what he said. What's he said?
Well,
Go ahead.
That I love this spectrum of fear and love.
Yeah.
Because it's the same word. I'm not saying it's arbitrarily, the choice is yours, but it's there in front of you. If you can feel God's grace, then that will supplant, that will infuse, that sense of awe will infuse you of something to ward off fear.
Yeah.
And if you're filled with fear, there's no place for awe to.
Beautiful. Yeah. So in a way, he's saying,
it's the same word.
It's the same word. But he's saying something else. What else is he saying, Clarence?
Well, I'm not sure whether I'm going to say what you think.
Go ahead. Say what you think.
I think this relates to, peace is related to God.
Go ahead.
In one's own understanding and heart, or in the first 26:3, faithfully observe. The manner in which you observe, faithfully, full of faith.
Yeah.
Full of faith in God and God's promise.
Yeah.
Means that you are acknowledging God in the right way.
Yeah.
And in that way, God is not just life, but is the key part of life.
Yeah. So
it's psychological. It is so much more higher than the 20th century psychologists we all know.
Right.
But he probably got his inspiration from it.
Oh, he did. Moses. Yeah. Freud. Moses. Yeah. But
I'm not talking about the psychologist.
Freud. Yeah. Freud wrote his great book on Moses, right? So, right. So, but what do we?
Peace, life, foundational is focused. God Michael, Job, understand your understanding of your faith in your awe of God influences how you approach.
Yes, if he influence, let me interrupt for a second because I want to, so what is he saying? Yes, right? He's saying, Behorsher is saying that it's all about approach. It's all about how. It's all about walking the way, because walking the way itself brings peace, whether there's peace in the land or not, because it brings peace of mind and fullness of heart, right? Does it mean everything's well? No. But he's saying that you can either live with fear or live with awe. Awe means the possibility of peace at every time, every moment, every day. It's all about how you walk. Right, go Jane quick, and then I gotta go to verse 9, so I want to run out of time.
It seems to me that the key here is, number one, those who've seen the destruction and chaos that war wreaks on the land and on the people. It's not something that you wanna get involved in, that's number one, but number two, I think that the most important part is we talk about isolationism and things that are going on outside, but it's really important not to encourage or invoke strife within not only yourself, but within the community.
Yes.
Because when you have strife within the community, you're not gonna have peace. You're not gonna have good agriculture. You're always gonna have people fighting against each other. So it's not just the within, but it's not just the without, but it's the within.
Yes, without question, which is right. So it's all about, right? It's all about, as Steve asked the question, so what does it say about our behavior? Does this imply? Yes. It's all, what's verse 9? Which is, my critique would be right if we didn't have verse 9 and follow, right? Because verse 9 says, not only do you have an obligation within, you have an obligation to keep covenant, which means you're connected to the entire world around you, right? So I think, and we'll see where it goes, but what does it say? Right? Look at the Hatava Kabbalah. Who's up? Misha.
Up until now, I dealt with you on account of my covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will no longer have to justify my treating you on a preferred basis by pointing to the merits of the patriarchs. From now on, the blessings will devolve upon you due to your own action.
It depends on what you do, right? Right? Your fate is in your hands, right? I gotta call on Shana before I call anybody else.
I wanted to add that there's no guarantee of no personal challenge. There is only the promise in verses 11 and 12 that I will establish my abode, in your midst. I will be with you. And that's, I think, I forgot who was commenting on the Behorsher, that's the higher understanding of the peace, that it's not that suddenly we're back in Eden. No, this is Israel becoming this new covenant being established post the fall, post an understanding, like Virginia was saying, of condition or reason, like Ellis was saying, of these polarities that we now have to deal with. We can have that peace with God in our.
Yeah. So I'm gonna comment on what you said, and I'm gonna bring in Clarence and Harley after I call on Steve.
So, okay, so, when Israel was established, there was nothing, there was land, and the people, left the ravages of, but they had the optimism, they had the belief that the land was gonna bring them the fullness and the wholeness that they needed.
Yeah.
And to this point, they went for it. They could have said no, but instead they chose that this is the place to be.
Yes.
And we got Israel.
Right.
So I believe the blueprint's there. So
okay, so you're going back to the blueprint. All right, I'll go Mike quick, then I'm gonna go Michael and Elizabeth, then I'm gonna go to the last topic.
Guess so that's, do you view God's promises as being tied to a specific piece of land? Or can it be interpreted more broadly to suggest that wherever the people Israel happen to reside? Yes.
Yeah, so let Harley, right, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
To both, right? The answer is yes to both, because biblically, right, don't make any mistake. We are biblically, this is Howard Erlinsky, great professor of Bible, my teacher, and Rabbi Pohlers. The covenant is between Israel, God, and the land. That's the land. That's that land, right? To a land that I will show you, Genesis 12. That's the land. Now, once we're not there for 2,000 years, does that mean, you know what, we could be Hindu, it's fine, whatever you want to do. Buju, yeah, go ahead. No, we are still, but, so, of course the covenant applies wherever we are. It has to. But this little piece of text is talking about a land-grounded particular peoplehood and how they act in this place. Now, there are ramifications for all of us, right? I'm gonna go quickly to Michael, then Elizabeth.
I just want to say that there is nevertheless a place for fear. Isn't there a psalm that says, serve the Lord in fear and rejoice in trembling? Are you
Yes,
probably
there is.
So like, this is the other side of the coin. No
Yeah,
fear between people, but between you and God, yes.
Yeah. But I could translate that same psalm, Eve do, right? In awe. So it's always there, Michael. It's always both and, right? Elizabeth, then I'm going to read the last comment and go to the drive.
Okay.
Oh, you muted Elizabeth. Unmute.
It's all about freedom, having the freedom to keep the covenant, to make the choice, to do your part of the covenant. You have no freedom. You had no freedom as a slave. You couldn't keep any such covenant, and now you have to. But you also mess up, of course. But
I broke the bars of your yoke and made you walk upright. Right. Here's what the Magid Demetri says. Right. Not like cattle, but with heads turned heavenward, walking in God's ways. Right. If you're bent over, but if you look up, there's a possibility beyond what you can even see, a vision, right? In a religious society, the presence and nearness of God are of vital concern and are contingent on the behavior of the people. Boom. Let's go to the drive. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no.
So one of the things I learned from Shana is that where I like the past tense, the Natati Shalom.
Yeah.
Is that instead of that the sense of peace will come not because I'm placing peace in the land, is that I've already placed peace in the land.
Yes.
I gave you peace.
So now let me underscore. I'm not but here's the thing. So this is why the Before Shore is brilliant. Because the Before Shore is implying, of course there's peace in the land. You just have to till it. You just have to sow it. You just have to realize it. You just have to work for it. Right, Steve? The only way we made those deserts bloom, I was there when I was, 17 and a half years old doing it, right? On your course, the only way is we have to put our hands in the land, meaning we have to get down and dirty. If you want to build peace, it's a lot of work, right? Right? The land doesn't grow, right? Right? So
There's some funny story, or somebody's gonna remember this, about these beautiful gardens, and I forget where, and the chief gardener standing there, and somebody walks by and says, "Isn't the work of the Lord tremendous?" And the gardener says, "Sure, but you should have seen it when the Lord was in charge." I'm butchering this, but if anybody knows the real version,
I love that. I love it. All right. Michael, do you want to be Shimon Peres, and then maybe Virginia will be a little other Shimon Peres? Is that okay? Oh, you don't know better yet. How about Virginia is the interviewer, and Michael, you're Shimon Peres. Remember who Shimon Peres is? Shimon Peres is approached by Ben Gurion to create the defense forces. He's there in 1947, right? He's part of Lehi. But Peres is a hawk who becomes a dove.
But he was also a terrorist.
The dove.
He was, the British thought he was.
Well, of course the British thought he was a terrorist, right? Right. But Peres dies in September 2016. This is in February of the same year. He's 92 and a half at this point. Go ahead, Virginia, you be the interviewer.
Okay, I'm Time Magazine. I always wanted to be Time Magazine. What do you think is the great obstacle to peace? What do you think is preventing Israel from reaching a peace agreement with the Palestinians?
Time Perez.
Yeah.
Usually when you have a disagreement, disagreement is produced by its own suspicion, hatred, mistrust. The greatest problem today is mistrust. Mistrust produces terror, and each side blames the other side. So it's the machine that works for itself, and we have to bring it down. People will say it's impossible, but that's nonsense. We made peace with Arabs, with some Arabs, yeah, and we live in peace with Arabs. We made peace with Egypt, the largest Arab country. We made peace with Jordan, the nearest Arab country, and it holds water for 30 years, 40 years. We started to make peace with the Palestinians, but it was cut in the middle because the Palestinians remained divided in two different groups.
Mm-hmm. How did you go from being this military man, this hawk, to becoming the face of peace movement, of the peace movement? What made you change?
I didn't change. I think the situation has changed. As long as there was a danger to the existence of Israel, I was what you would call a hawk. You know, it's not a simple story because the UN decided to build two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state, Palestine and Israel. We accepted, the Arabs refused. Not only did they refuse, but they attacked Israel. And even the countries that voted for Israel refused to give us arms to defend our lives. We were in danger of disappearing and we had nothing. They declared an embargo against us. And on the other hand, the Russians, of course the Russians, supplied arms to the Arabs. So to me as a young man, and I think that was the reason why Ben Gurion called me, was to find a way to create our self-defense establishment. And it was very, very difficult, almost impossible. We had to work hard day and night in a creative manner to build our defense system. The minute I felt the Arabs are open to negotiation, I said, that's what we prefer too. We weren't looking for war. We were looking for peace and security.
Do you think Israel is safer today than in 1996 when you were last prime minister?
Israel will become safe when the skies over the Middle East become blue again and not filled with the red colors of killing and the terrible news of refugees. When I see the young men and women of Syria being forced out of their homes, it is a tragedy for all of us.
But do you think Israel is safer today than it was 20 years ago?
You cannot measure it. The fact that Israel is strong, yes. The fact that Israel is alone and a minority, yet didn't lose a war, makes her stronger, yes. But Israel will be stronger when she will achieve peace. That is our main purpose.
Many Israelis, especially on the right, Oslo is a dirty word. It's hard to imagine that the Israeli public of today would get behind a two-state solution. Do you worry about that?
We saw it already. There were times when the right was against a two-state solution. There were times, there are times. The world is changing and opinions are changing, and I'm not terribly impressed by the polls. They're changeable. They're not permanent. If the polls would have been taken in Sinai 3,500 years ago, I'm not sure that Moses would have a majority. You know, people have to get used to new things.
Shall we continue, Jeffrey, or you?
Good job. We're at the edge of our seats.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
For the last 4 decades or so, you've been the face of the peace movement. And today, there aren't many mainstream politicians coming out in front of a two-state solution. What do you think is the future of the peace movement? Do you think the peace movement has a leader today?
If you ask me to whom does the future belong, to the people who knife someone else to kill, or the people who pray for peace, I'm telling you that the prayers are stronger than the knives. I think the right things are stronger than the wrong things. And I'm regretting every loss of life. And I think the world is in a transformation, as I've said. Unfortunately, it's not completed.
What is your biggest regret in your political life?
Very good. My greatest mistakes were to dream too small. I suggest people who ask me for advice, dream great. Don't hesitate. Very nice.
What is the future of Israel without a peace agreement?
Yeah. We will see terror, bloodshed, hatred, victims, everything. But you know, in my lifetime, I saw many things that people said they're unsolvable. Apartheid. People said, apartheid you cannot change. Look what happened. Look what happened to communism. Look what happened to fascism. I don't believe that the wrong is eternal. It is killing. It makes everything ugly. And I'm sure that the newly born people, every generation, time and again, wants to change it and get rid of it. Terror cannot achieve anything. So the choice is between having a solution which is humane, just, right, and that is a two-state solution. We shouldn't run the lives of the Palestinians. And I think it will come and win sooner than maybe most people think. If not, we will see all the time the spread of terror. There is no solution but a just solution. And a just solution is not I'm ruling you, you're ruling me. I believe it will happen. The alternative will force it to happen. From all mouth, God's ears.
If this is not prescience, I don't know what is.
Wow.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lloyd. I'm gonna start with Lloyd.
I mean, it's not gonna fact that Shimon Peres, memory is right, never won an election for a minute.
No. It wasn't, oh, never, well, yeah, okay, never won an election, yeah.
So moving from that, Lincoln, second inaugural deals with this better. And actually much more forthright.
Okay.
He goes ahead and he says that for 200 X years, blood has to be drawn, blood will be drawn. They both pray to the same God.
Right.
And he's basically saying the war will eventually come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
But it isn't going to be pretty.
Yeah.
And Shimon Peres always has to grandstand into some sort of, isn't it groovy kind of moment.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's an groovy, but he for sure, he is indefatigable in his insistence, right? That but he also isn't such. I mean, he's saying you can't lose hope. You can't, right? But he's saying something else here, which is he gives us he says, right? He talks about Israel being stronger. We weren't looking for war. We were looking for peace and security, shalom and betach. It's in the portion, right? But he also says, right? Terror cannot achieve anything. And he also says, we will, what will be without a peace agreement? We will see terror, bloodshed, right? We know, right? It's almost inevitable. Steve.
On our first trip to Israel, I'll never forget us going to a bakery. The bakery was on one level. Then you went down the ladder, and that's where they made the ammunition.
Right, the IL-1 Institute. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, yeah, it's about the land and it's about peace, but you have to have strength. And the Israelis understood that, and right under the British's nose, they made literally under their nose. They made
bullets. It was a bullet factory.
Yeah.
A munitions factory.
At the end of the day, they were looking for peace.
Yes. Clarence the Bachelor, and then it.
Thinking about what Lloyd's saying about Lincoln, I don't know whether this is a substantive difference, but the Civil War is in the United States is a civil war between brothers. Whereas what's going on in Israel isn't necessarily between brothers, although there is internal discord within Israel.
Right.
It's not bloodshed, this might be gathered.
No.
But it's against, it's to defend from murderous others.
Well, yeah.
But in the definition, again, in biblical notion is other.
Yeah, also, yeah, so,
So
you know, if,
maybe there's a slight distinction.
yeah, so if West Bank settlers are killing, killing residents who happen to be Arab, that's an strike, right? Lloyd and Andy.
Going back to the Lincoln piece.
You go ahead, please.
Building with mindset. US is now involved for a decade, probably continued for a while, its own version of an internal full civil war. But dealing with the reality is Paris is a statesman. If that can go on between people who quote worship the same God, who both ask for his assistance, and yet can kill each other.
Right.
And right now we're at boiling point.
Right.
Really?
Yeah. So Perez clearly is up here, right? And we are still here, right? And right, what's the prerequisite to peace? We just read it in verse 5, which is if you don't have, if you have inner conflict, if you're killing each other, you can't get close to peace, right? If you're ripping each other apart,
I think Arnie was quite right earlier when he said that how do you have peace with somebody who doesn't want peace? The first line of the Hamas charter is wiping out Israel.
Right.
And we Americans don't believe that.
Right.
But it's the truth.
Right.
And the fact is that Shimon Peres is not liked by any of the Israelis we spoke to in our big 5-week trip. He is a pariah, and the Oslo Accords are a pariah. They have done nothing but create more strife. And you cannot have peace with somebody who doesn't want you to exist.
So
This country has not done a good job to support the Israelis wiping out.
right.
Well,
Right. So I would say two things, because I gotta go to the so, which I may just encapsulate briefly. So I would tell one major piece is this. I think that among many people, not all, Peres is a lofty dreamer. The Shimon Peres Peace Center, in Jerusalem is an amazing place. It tells the story of a dream, not realized, right? And it is that of a statesman who worked and didn't achieve what he wanted to achieve. But not every Palestinian is a card-carrying member of Hamas, nor is every Israeli Arab out to cut our throats. My friend Ihab Omar, who is the founder of B'nai Bustan B'nai Abraham, right, which is the orchard of Abraham's children, with his wife, Israeli wife. He's a Muslim, an Arab Israeli, grew up in Jaffa. They established the first ever Arab Israeli kindergarten because they wanted to have their first kid, right? Fast forward 20 years, they have 22 of them around Israel. They do an educators conference every year in the Negev for 350 educators. Right? So don't tell me that you can't talk to each other. Right. So I will tell you this. This is my friend, colleague, Rabbi Josh Weinberg. He is the president of the American Reform Zionist Association, our arm of Israel Connection. He writes on Israel's birthday, when was it? 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, right? I'm writing to you in a moment when you're at war. He's talking to Israel, right? The land is animated. Two fronts, both enemies backed by a venomous adversary, hell-bent on destruction, right? Celebrating its harbor, 132 of our people are hostage. Since your last birthday, greatest trauma we've experienced ever, right? Your government has begun to unravel. Defense establishment is at an increasing odds with your prime minister. I write to you as you have been the center of protests around the world by people who regard you as a source of evil, placards, slogans, etc., etc. Nevertheless, they make an impression. And then he goes on. As a Jew, I am grateful for who you are and for what you've become in your short 76 years. You made the desert bloom, advanced in industrial democracy. Your rich ethnic diversity is a testament to your open arms, street, cities, mixed multitude. So he's talking about, it's a very diverse place. It's a place that is a democracy, despite the attempt of some leaders to maybe derail it a little bit or make it less so. I love your resilience, never give up spirit. It's infectious. I love that you're a state of Jews, that you are also a deeply Jewish state. I love that the evolving religious civilization of the Jewish people continues to grow in the public square. I love that I can argue with one of your taxi drivers, and at the end of the ride, be invited for Shabbat dinner, right? That's Israel, right? This inspires no lack of disagreement. But at the end of the day, we know that these are disagreements for the sake of heaven. If they're not for the sake of heaven, by the way, you want to kill each other, right? That is not security in the land, right? That's dissension, inner strife. I love sometimes you care what the world thinks, and sometimes you do not. I love you despite the anguish I sometimes feel when I am at odds with your government's decisions, and when I feel that the Judaism that I live and practice is at odds with the prevailing Israeli notion of what it means to be Jewish. I love that you want to be accepted by your neighbors and to live with them in peace. I love your ubiquitous positivity. Everything will be okay, Yeh Beseder. I love you because you're the manifestation of the greatest collective project in Jewish history. And then this is his wish for Israel's birthday. You, along with all your allies and friends, do everything in your power to end this war, safely bring all hostages home, provide safety and security. Interesting choice of words for your people and all those under your sovereignty. You bring a resolution to the conflict with the Palestinians through a two-state reality. You continue expanding your acceptance, normalization, and outreach to other countries in the region, achieving a pact with the Saudis. This cannot, of course, come without a resolution to apply to the Palestinian people. You realize that bringing in extremists to the government helps no one but the extremists. You create and enhance a sense of shared society inside of Israel, acknowledging 21% Palestinian citizens of Israel. You go from victim to victor without becoming a villain. You fulfill all of your aspirations set out in the Megillat Ha'atzmaut, the Declaration of Independence, and then it says, so why is this still aspirational? Right? It's hard to make peace if you feel like there's no partner, right? It's also hard to make peace if you can't agree on what peace means. And so not that, and I quoted this knowing, boy, some people are going to hate this Paris piece, right? But I did it intentionally, only to say, right? Paris, and I had a Rabin piece originally, which was the Rabin piece, which was his 1967 speech on Har Sophim at the end of the 6-Day War, basically saying, we didn't win anything, folks, right? We may have gotten back land, but we have an army that hates war, and I hate war. It's not easy, but we got to find a way to peace. This is the head of the the IDF saying this after the 6-Day War, the great victory. So I will say to you, it's aspiration. Having peace in the land, right? Dwelling securely in the land means making peace with the people of the land. All the people of the land. But there are going to be some people who don't want peace. You can't make peace with them. Does Israel need a strong defense force? The strongest. I have no doubt. Does Israel have to keep fighting this war? A war that through which their goals will never be actualized? I don't think so. That's me. I'm just one little guy, right? And of course, we know what very powerful heads of state do when they're in the midst of a war and their future seems questionable vis-a-vis the courts, right? So just to note, I think there's a lot of motivations here. My motivation remains peace, right? Right? The word shalom, Harley said this at the beginning. I'm just tell him I'm quoting him so I get my dollar. Right? Shalom, right? The root of shalom is shalem, to be whole. Not to be broken, but to be whole. Harley, I'm quoting him. Right? Right? So shalemut means wholeness. It doesn't mean you got peace with everybody and it's all hunky-dory and everybody's sitting without, under their vines and fig trees, not to make them afraid. It means the possibility of connection is real and you're trying. You're trying to make the blueprint come to life. Not easy. Mark, last question.
What about the beginning part, the covenant, as to the promises and the curses, how to live?
Yeah.
What about that?
No, I think that's the key. Because the key, we have a path to walk. God says, walk this path. The word for law, Jewish law, is halacha, the way. So if you walk the way, right, whether or not you have peace all around you, you'll have enough peace within you to make peace with the people you're walking. So I think the covenant is crucial. However, there's gonna be some people on the way who don't walk the way, and they take a diversion, and they come at you like this, and it's not with open arms.
And you should make sure you have a sword.
That is my new T-shirt. Peace, ... make sure you have a sword. All right, guys, I'm sorry, we gotta go. I gotta do banana stuff. Shabbat shalom, folks.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom, guys.
Take care.
Shabbat shalom.